This is Morocco Part 2. All right. So describe the apartment in the Arab village.
Well, you walked in the door, and there was what was supposed to be your kitchen, and had a little uh, uh, sink on metal legs, and no stove, no refrigerator. We borrowed a refrigerator from a captain who ended up with two. I don't know how he did that.
And what were the floors like?
They were those terrazzo tile type floors with no foundation under them. So they leaked with the moisture from underneath. It was rainy season. Um, and no cupboards, no stove. We borrowed furniture from the base, which they had available to families when they came. You could borrow their furniture until your own came. Ours was on its way on board a ship. So Dad had checked out a two-burner hot stove for hot plates for me to cook on, and a little unpainted wooden stand to put the hot plates on. No kind of washing machine or anything. Then you walked from the kitchen down, opened the door, and there was a mini hallway. That was the bath area, and there was a wash basin, sink on one wall, and here was on the opposite wall was the shower and the toilet. Well, the toilet didn't have a roof over it completely. It just had a partial roof. So when it rained, you got rained on in the toilet. And there was no toilet seat, and it was one of those chain toilets. You pulled the chain, and it had the tank up here. And
So you went down the hallway, and on either side was the bathroom, but were there doors? I mean, was there a door you could close while you were going to the toilet?
yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah. And there was no complete roof over the shower stall either. And the floor was just cement, cold cement. So Dad built a wooden frame to stand on in the shower. And I don't remember whether we ever got a toilet seat or not. Oh, and then on the other side of that room was supposed to be the living room or whatever. And there was no furniture in that, so Dad checked out a metal table and metal chairs and some big hassocks to sit on from the base. And then you went through another door there, and that was our bedroom area. And the bedroom area was divided into a little bedroom for you boys, and then a little bigger bedroom for Dad and me and you. Well, we had to borrow a crib, fold-up crib for you to sleep in our bedroom, and Dad checked out from the base a 3/4 fold-up bed for him and me. And then you boys, he checked out army cots with army blankets for you boys.
For Mike and George.
Yeah, for Mike and George. And so they had that one little room. Well, every night Dad would have to go around and with a broom and kill the mice that were running around, because they would start running around the bedrooms after dark. So he'd go around trying to get rid of the mice, while I'm standing in the middle of the bed screaming, and the boys are all, oh! And every morning I had to wipe up the moisture and the mildew that would come up from the baseboard.
Did you actually kill the mice? Did he kill some mice?
He just shoosh them out.
Okay, but they would come back in the middle of the night, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Would you find their droppings?
No, I really didn't. I don't remember.
Huh.
I don't remember. I remember them going through my pots and pans in the kitchen, and I could hear them rattling, and I'd open the doors and shoosh them out. The reason we had so many mice was we were out on the edge of the Arab village, and it was agricultural, and we were out near the fields.
So they were field mice?
Field mice.
Oh, okay.
Little field mice.
Cute little field mice.
Oh, cute little field mice. Yuck. Anyway, that's what we walked into. And
okay, well, and this house, so how long did you stay there before
4 months, well, until March. From
Okay.
November, late November to March.
Okay, so that's 4 months.
We had Christmas there.
Uh-huh. And how far was this from the base?
A 15-minute drive.
Okay. So describe, and how many units were in this?
How many were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5.
Okay.
And different nationalities lived in them.
So it wasn't necessarily all.
It wasn't all
from the base-
military.
From the base.
No,
Oh, okay.
there was an Italian family that lived in one of them. I really didn't get to know any of them.
What would they be doing there? Would they be working on the base, or would they be doing other
Have
things?
no
Since
idea.
it's
I
still
never
in
knew.
Morocco.
I never knew what they were doing there.
Okay. So describe the village. So you walk out, and what are you into? I mean, what are you looking at?
Well, it's a dirt road that went past our complex, and the Arab women would come past every morning with their children on their backs like the Indians and like papooses, and our big garbage containers were out there that we'd put our garbage in, and they'd go through our garbage and hand stuff to the babies. It was, when I saw that, I had to be very careful what I put in there. And Dad strung some clotheslines in front, and we
So right next to the road, right next.
next to the little dirt road.
Okay.
And I borrowed a little Bendix washing machine from my neighbor, Ed and Wynn, the general's aide that lived next door to us. And she let me use her washing machine, her Bendix, when I had to wash clothes. And then I'd hang them out in front of the
So there was no back door to the back of the.
I don't remember a
So
back
you
door.
couldn't put lines in the back.
Okay. I don't
Okay.
remember a back door at all in that. No, we didn't have one.
So when you said you had to be careful putting things in the trash, so you had to be careful about not putting any medicine.
Right, because you boys got sick, I got sick, Dad got sick, we all got sick with bronchitis after I arrived. And so we had medications. So I realized I couldn't put them out in that garbage.
But you would hang clothes right there by the road.
Yeah,
Would you be worried that they would be taken?
they were.
Mm-hmm.
They were taken one day. We woke up and here they were. They had taken them and put them in a big bag and had put the bag by the front door and were trying to take Ed Wynn's wallet and his clothes from his apartment next door when Ed woke up and chased him out. And so he left his bag and everything as he.
You mean the thief actually went into their apartment?
Yeah.
Entered their apartment?
Yeah, well, there was no roof up there.
Well, they came in through the roof,
Through the top.
but they knew that people were in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they ran off without taking your stuff.
Yeah.
And this was like early in the morning, or?
Yeah, it was in the morning.
Okay. So did you change your habits after that? Did you just
There wasn't much we could change.
really?
Wasn't much we could
But
change.
you left the wash on overnight.
Do I?
You had left the laundry on the line overnight, and then woke up in the morning.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was during the night that they came in.
So maybe just during the day, then you did it, or maybe I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember.
So there's this dirt road along the village, and the Arab people just walk up and down. And were they were they poor? To describe them, I mean they're.
Well, I think they were, but I don't know. I never was that intimate with them or saw them that. It was mostly at a distance. Don and Steffi and their family lived right in the village. They were renting a house in the village. But I really did no shopping or anything in the village except to go to Don and Steffi's house. I did take you down, and George down the road to an Arab. I don't know what to call it. A bakery. It was a strange thing to call a bakery, but it was where they made these wonderful chocolate-filled rolls and Arab bread,
Mm-hmm.
which was heavy, but I just loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when took her little boy, and I took you two kids, and we walked down there to watch them. And there were the Arabs with their bare feet on the dirt floor inside this little Arab shack building. And they had great big earthen ovens, like you see the pizzas, and the shovels to put the bread in. And if they dropped a loaf that went on it, they just pick it up and brush it off and put it back and put it and bake it.
Now, do they generally wear shoes, or were they mostly barefoot?
What?
Were they mostly barefoot just in the village, or did they all wear shoes or some sort of footwear?
Sandals or barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you actually rarely got into the village itself. Rarely.
Mm-hmm.
You rarely got into the village itself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, when we got into the village, it'd be just to go to Don and Steffi's little place where they lived.
Okay. How far was your place from the village?
Not far. 5 minutes.
By car?
By car.
Okay. So what did you cook? How did you shop for what did you cook? And what were you able to buy? And what were some of the frustrations around that?
I bought all my groceries at the commissary on base.
Okay.
And we could not get fresh milk like we were used to. It was all reconstituted milk or reconstituted ice cream. You couldn't get some veggies like at Christmas I wanted some celery for my stuffing, and I couldn't find any celery. They just didn't have any. All my grocery shopping was in the commissary, and they had a BX where you could shop for
Daily necessities.
daily necessities and
Clothes.
yeah.
So you bought nothing in the village to eat?
No, nothing.
Not even the bread and stuff?
I remember having the bread, but I don't recall actually bartering or buying it where they were making it.
Maybe they sold it in the commissary.
Could probably, but I remember I just loved it.
Yeah. What about water? What about drinking water?
I had to carry it. Dad had to carry it home from the base in cans, great big cans. At the register at the commissary, they had a big bin, and they had aluminum foil sealed packages of chlorine type disinfectant that you always picked up when you left, and you had to soak anything that was fresh. I forget how many minutes, 20 minutes. You had to soak them and then rinse them real well before you could use them, like your potatoes.
Even the potatoes you bought on the base?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because they bought those in Morocco. Obviously.
Yeah, right. Now, the reflex crews would fly there in their great big Bombays. They would carry wholesome sandwich bread and deliver that to the commissary. And each family were allotted 2 loaves of sandwich bread when they'd land there.
Now, what's a reflex crew?
But they were crews called reflex for I don't know why, but they were had to do with being war ready if something happened.
Okay.
And they would just come in on their practice missions.
Okay.
But they'd carry stuff for us in their Bombays.
From Europe or wherever. Yeah. So, how about meat? Were you able to buy meat?
Through the commissary.
Right.
Never fresh from anywhere else.
Okay.
Adequate.
So and then washing water, you had running water, I assume.
Yeah.
And you could use that to take showers and stuff
Yeah.
like that? Yeah. Well, would you brush your teeth with the water Dad brought home?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Like we did in Cambodia, if you remember.
Right. So what would you cook? What kinds of meals did you cook?
I'm trying to think. I cooked oatmeal in the morning a lot, and of course, I'll never forget. I could count on the electricity going off about the time I'd start breakfast on Sunday. For some reason, the electricity, maybe it was because everybody was home on Sunday using it, and it would go out. So we heated our little place with what was called Aladdin heaters, English Aladdin heaters, kerosene heaters. And that's how we heated the place. They were little, very small little heaters. So I'd take the top off of the heater and turn it over and use it as a hot plate and cook my oatmeal on that for Sunday breakfast. Because the electricity would always go out on Sunday morning.
Other than Sunday morning, was it pretty reliable?
It was pretty much.
And the water also?
Yeah, didn't have any trouble with it.
So oatmeal on oatmeal for breakfast usually.
Yeah, and I can remember cooking big pot of beans on my hot plate. Mm-hmm. I remember frying foods on the hot plate. I had no oven, so anything that required an oven, forget it. Couldn't do that. I don't remember specifically what I cooked, but I do remember cooking the pot of beans. It was fun.
So you weren't able to do things like a meatloaf? Anything that required an oven you couldn't do?
Anything that required an oven.
It was all skillet cooking?
All skillet cooking or boiling.
And Dad would be away for lunch, probably.
Oh yeah, he'd go in the morning and come back in the late afternoon or evening.
Right. So what would you prepare for lunch for the boys? Do you remember? Did you have
probably sandwiches?
Okay. So did you have peanut butter or cold cuts?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And was it just water, milk? Any other kinds of fluids?
That was about it.
Okay. Did you have any help?
No.
No domestic help at this point?
No.
No, okay. Doing everything on your own?
Yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned that there was a war going on, and Moroccans were kicking the French out and establishing their independence. You look as French as anybody.
Yeah, I look quite French to a lot of them.
Well, so what was going on? I mean, were you warned by the base
I
about
was
going places?
not by the base, but by Dad. There was no official warning given to me personally, but Dad said that they were requesting that the Americans not take advantage on the road and go through any barricades which were sometimes erected, to obey the law. We were told to stay home as much as possible during that time. A captain and his family went through a barricade before I arrived there, and they got stopped. And I don't know whether they were shot at or not, but nobody was killed. But they got pretty strict with the military. They made it very clear that the Arabs were not after us. They didn't want to harm us. All they wanted to do was steal whatever we had, because we were like the Vanderbilts to them. We were wealthy people to the Arabs. And so they didn't see anything wrong with stealing anything we had. But they had no intention of harming us.
Well, unless you were French, maybe.
No, unless I was French. Right. I'm talking about Americans.
Right, but who knows if you're an American or
exactly.
French person, so that's my point.
Exactly, and that's what Dad kept impressing upon me. They don't know whether you're French or American, and they may not take the time to find out.
Right.
So be very careful.
So you stayed close to home.
I stayed home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And didn't go out at night, I assume.
No.
No going out at night.
No.
That kind of thing. Okay. Did you encounter any, other than stealing and that sort of thing, were the Arabs generally just kind of ignore you, or were they friendly?
They didn't pay any attention.
Right. I guess they were used to foreigners around.
Yeah, I'm just hanging out there.
Yeah. Okay.
You kids played with all the kids in the complex there. You kids played outside in the fields with all these Italian kids and everybody else.
Yeah.
Mike remembers that. He said we couldn't understand each other, but we had a lot of fun.
So let's talk about that. So once you're at the Arab village, you can enroll Mike in school. What school did he go to?
On the base.
Okay.
It's the only one. I'm sure the Catholic churches had some kind of. There were a lot of Catholic churches there. Excuse me, but they had school on the base for just elementary grade. People with high school age kids had to send them to another town. That was hard for them.
Right.
But we got Mike enrolled there, and they had excellent teachers, highly interviewed and looked at before they were ever hired. And George and Mike had very good teachers over there. George was not in school the first year. They didn't have kindergarten, but he started school the second year we were there. Irene McKenna was his first grade teacher. She was fabulous, wonderful teacher. I forget Mike's second grade teacher's name, but his third grade teacher was Diane Krickeldorf.
And so did they learn French in school?
Yeah, they had I forget how many minutes a class they had every day of French. George fell in love with his French teacher.
Okay. And so would a bus come and pick them up?
Oh yeah.
Well, only Mike from a village.
Air Force bus would pick Mike up at our door.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about, you said everybody got sick. What about medical care? You just used the base hospital? Was there a base hospital?
There was a base hospital, as such as it was, very limited, but with, I forget, there were a number of doctors. My first encounter was when you got sick. You got very bad, I guess it was bronchitis, and I was scared to death because, of course, you know, we lost Kathy the year before. And Bill Doherty, all his life, would remind me how I walked into that, I forget what they called it, the hospital there.
Dispensary or whatever.
Dispensary. And I was carrying, he said, you were carrying that little boy, and you came in there and you said, somebody please help me take care of my baby. He said, I'll never forget it.
Bill Doherty
being a young doctor, pediatrician, who had just graduated from medical school and residency, and he owed the service 3 years of his. And he was a great doctor. He was so good with the children. And we became lifelong friends until he died.
Right.
Lifelong friends.
So was this a full-on hospital or just a dispensary? How seriously ill did you have to be shipped out to go somewhere else? Do you remember?
Well, you boys with your eye problems had to go to Germany. I had to take you to Wiesbaden for that. They had a huge Air Force military hospital in Wiesbaden, Germany, which was wonderful because we could fly up there in a few hours and take care of anything. Anything serious had to be flown up to Germany.
For example, any surgery, for example, would that have to be?
Oh no, that had to be done up in Germany.
Okay. So this is basically just outpatient stuff, colds, flus.
Well, I spent a week in the hospital the summer of '57 in Cities, Maine, with pneumonia.
Okay.
So they had patients in the hospital. Yeah.
Anything seriously, you're off to Wiesbaden.
No, they took care of me there.
Nice, but anything serious?
Anything really serious,
So you took George and me to Wiesbaden to look at our eyes?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I thought that was always Dad.
Well, no, Dad and I both went.
Uh,
He'd fly the courier up, and I would be on the plane with you kids.
mhm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were both up there.
How often did you do that?
Well, every 2-year tour that a family had, they were given 30-day leave and transportation up and back to Europe.
Mhm.
And so we did that
Mhm.
in 57. No, we did that in 58. I got pneumonia in 57 and we had to cancel it.
But the trips to Wiesbaden were for medical purposes. Those were short trips, like for our eyes.
No,
Or did you combine those with our vacation?
well, we would combine those with the weekly trip up to Wiesbaden.
Right, but you didn't go to Wiesbaden every week.
No, no.
So, how many trips did you make to Wiesbaden
For your eyes?
for our eyes? Right?
Well, George's was done at the end of our month's leave up in Europe.
Mhm.
So Dad left us there and brought Mike back to school.
Mhm.
And he left you and me up there with George. And he was in the hospital for 2 nights or 3 nights. You really had very little done with your eyes while we were over there. It was after we came back.
Well, I did have the trip. I mean, I was scheduled for eye surgery.
Oh, you were scheduled for eye surgery. Dad took you up that time.
Right.
I wasn't with you.
So you went, okay. So you were in Wiesbaden once, maybe, for our eyes.
Yeah.
And Dad took me up that one time.
And spent a week with you in the hotel.
Right, right.
He had more fun with you.
Yeah. So, okay, well, that covers kind of the medical aspect. So, other than all of us getting sick with bronchitis, early on, were there any other medical issues?
Just a pneumonia with me. Mike was in the hospital for 1 or 2 nights. He had a minor brain concussion. One of the boys that lived next door hit him on top of the head, and they kept him overnight. I think just one night, to be sure that he was going to be all right.
But was this, how much stress did this put on you, knowing that, you had a medical situation where, if it was serious enough, you had to leave? How stressful was that? Do you recall that being stressful?
It wasn't. I knew that they were taking care of us.
Okay.
The military made you feel very safe with their care.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of faith in getting care when we needed it.
Now, you're in this Arab village for 4 months.
Uh-huh.
What are you thinking at this time? Can you remember? Here's this girl from Tucson. You just had your first plane ride. You just left United, and here you are sitting in this village with a much lower standard of living than you're used to, dealing with mice and Arabs stealing your laundry. And do you recall what you were thinking at the time?
I thought it was exciting.
Okay.
Frank, you're going to think I'm a real doozy or whatever you want to call me. But as long as Dad was around, I felt so secure. I always knew I would be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
I never worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed the first night we walked into that little hovel that we stayed in the village. Before we left Tucson, and Dad was already in Africa, Avonelle Grimes had me over to her house for dinner with the 3 children. And she said, "Oh, Abby," she said, "I just envy you. You're going over there to Africa and you're going to have all those Fatimas waiting on you, padding around, taking care of you and waiting on you, and it's going to be so exciting." Well, the night that I walked in with Dad to this place where we're going to live, the electricity went out. And I looked around and no stove, no refrigerator, and I put my arms around Dad, I'll never forget it, and gave him a big hug, and I said, "Now I'm in wonderful, glamorous Morocco, like Avonelle said, with all the little Fatimas waiting on me." And I looked around and I started to laugh.
Now, just to be clear, Avonelle actually used the word Fatima, do you remember? Or she just meant all
No,
these people?
she used the word Fatima.
Okay, so people generally knew that that's what women were
Yeah,
called
uh-huh,
in Arab countries by foreigners.
Right.
And what'd you call the men? Was it?
Over in the country?
Yeah.
Fatima.
No, the men.
Oh, Mohammeds.
So the men were Mohammeds and the women were Fatimas.
And that was extremely common. That's what they were called.
And then the Arabs were used to being called those.
Yeah,
so
right.
They didn't take offense
Oh, no.
necessarily.
Mm-mm.
Okay. There was. So what would we do? What would the boys? What would we do for recreation?
Well, there was a library on the base.
Mm-hmm.
I took you boys to the library.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you were a little young for that, but not really. There was a favorite book about little Indian boy, that I kept checking out of the library for you. And I still see me sitting on your bed with you, little 2-year-old, and you loved that book. And I'd try to skip pages because I would be so in a hurry to do something. And you'd say, no, mommy, no, mommy. And you knew the story so well. And you wouldn't let me skip any pages in it. The boys always checked out lots of books from the library. There was a movie theater on the base, and so we went to the movies. We went to chapel services on Sunday morning. I joined the church choir and sang in the choir, and I played the piano for Sunday school.
Were there Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and,
yes,
and Little League? And
yeah,
stuff
Dad
like
was Dad was what do they call the Boy Scout leader?
Mm-hmm.
He was a leader.
Leader or whatever.
For a long time, and I was a whatever the mother.
A den mother?
Den mother.
Yeah.
Den mother. I was a den mother. None of you boys really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't interested in it. They had Little League.
Mm-hmm.
Dad was a coach in Little League, and you boys all played Little League. You didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You were too young. You learned to ride a bicycle while we were over there. Dad bought German bikes for Mike and George the first Christmas we were there. Dad bought me an old secondhand beat-up piano that they sold over at the Officers Club when they bought new pianos, because he thought I should have a piano. It was a great 3 years. It was only supposed to be 2 years, and you could extend 3 years to another year. And so Dad extended another year.
So you guys were enjoying it enough to
Oh, we loved it.
voluntarily.
We loved
You're
it.
having a good time.
We loved it.
Yeah.
Dad was home more than usual.
Yeah.
He was gone, but he'd only be gone for 4 days, 3 days, never more than a week.
And were there like problems with playing outside with like animals or anything like that you had to be careful of? Do you remember?
No, there didn't seem to be.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
There were no snakes or anything, or wild wolves? Or
I don't know.
that you remember? Yeah. Did you see any camels?
They had some on the base. I think they were just for show and for fun.
Okay.
You boys got on them, and we have some pictures of you kids on the camels.
But you didn't see generally around the Berbers?
Oh, no, no.
Nomads with anything like that? Okay. It's a fairly developed area. Right. Tell us, tell us about the evacuation.
Oh, well,
Start from the beginning.
by this time we had moved onto the base in March, in time for George's birthday party at March 21st. And we moved into our quarters, and I don't know what month it was, but it was a school month during the school year. And of course, your brothers went to school on base, and we had Duke by this time.
Okay, Duke being a boxer.
A boxer dog that we inherited. So it had to be the second year on base. And the loudspeakers, about noontime, the loudspeakers came on the base, all over the base, telling us families to get ready and prepare your car to leave the base because we had to evacuate. They expected, I don't know whether it was a bomb or what, to go off because a plane had, on the takeoff on the runway, had, I guess, crashed. I'm not quite clear what happened. And napalm bombs were going off from the plane, and whatever napalm is, and it had a nuclear bomb on it, but it was not armed, and I don't think it was. I've never been sure about that, but it was a very serious situation. It was on the runway. It had come down on the runway, and they didn't know what was going to happen, so they wanted to evacuate the whole base.
Could you see smoke from any plane? Because I know the plane was on fire. I know that.
No, I didn't bother to look and
smoke.
see. I was busy getting you kids into the, well, I only had you. George and Frank, George and Mike were in school.
So you were at home.
I was at home with you and the dog.
And you could hear the loudspeakers from inside
Oh
the
yeah,
house? Okay.
Oh yeah. And they were going around on a truck with a loudspeaker to let all of us know that we had, for the most part, we were all required to have evacuation kits in our car, so that if anything happened, we could always get off the base right away. So we already had that, and blankets.
Do you remember what was in the kit?
Water, some canned goods, minimum medical stuff.
Okay.
The very basic evacuation type things, so that if we had to, we could go up into the mountains.
Well, the idea is to go to the mountains.
Yeah, if there was a really bad, serious attack or something.
Interesting.
And but they told us to evacuate out of the base onto the highway and stop. And so we did. And City of Hill was a very small, tiny little Navy station that was an intelligence station. And they were down the road. So eventually the air police led this whole base of cars with families in it down the highway to City of Hill.
Now you had the car. Dad was. Dad was not there.
Dad was in Spain.
Dad was flying back.
Dad was in Madrid.
So you had the car.
I had the car, and I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't. I guess Dad would have rushed home with it and gotten us.
Not necessarily. Well, not necessarily. He may have been on duty. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. But as it turned out, I had the car. And they wouldn't let me take Duke.
Oh.
And I was so angry. I said, I can't leave without my dog. You cannot take your dog. Put him in the house. So I had to leave Duke, and that upset me. So, and then I was also very upset that I didn't have my other two boys with me.
They were in school.
They were in school, and it was about lunchtime. I remember that very clearly. And I said, I can't leave the base without my other two boys. I've got to know where my two boys are. They are being taken care of on school buses. Don't worry about them. We're taking care of them. Get yourself and your son, little boy, off the base. So I had to drive off the base with you and my evacuation kit, hoping I'd see.
Yeah, Dad's somewhere. George is somewhere. You're with me. You're
yeah.
What did you have beside the go kit that was already in the car?
That was already in the car.
Were you able to prepare anything else, or they just said
no? I just put you in the car. I got in the car with the keys in my purse, and I followed all the cars off the base, and then followed the entourage down the highway, and they finally stopped all of us and had us pull off of the highway. It was a narrow highway, and we pulled off the side of the highway, and I remember getting out of the car after we parked off the highway and finding the bus, the school bus, and found George and Mike.
So you basically got out of the car and walked along the line
until I found the school bus.
With me, obviously, in tow.
And found your brothers, and then we went into what was her name? Oh, I remember their name. They were such a nice couple. They worked in Boy Scouts on the base. The City of Hia couple. And we stayed in their house until they started calling us back to the base.
Now you're talking about a long line of cars on the side of the road. I mean, how many cars are we talking about?
I have no idea.
How long did it take you to find the bus? Do you remember?
Not long.
So you're just lucky the bus was close?
Yeah.
You recognize the bus?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is this only one bus could have all the kids? Or
as I recall, but there must have been more.
were you able to take the boys off the bus?
Yeah.
Okay, they let you take the boys. Okay, so.
Yeah.
All right, and then you walk back to the car.
Right.
And then what happened?
Well, I don't remember how long it took for them to call us back, but it was before dark.
But you went to City of Hia first.
But we stopped at City of Hia.
You were able to leave the line?
Well, I did with you boys and went in and stayed at the Navy family there that we knew.
So they allowed you to pull out and just...
We all were out off of the highway.
Well, I know, but you're off the highway. You have to get back on the highway.
Oh, yeah.
And they allowed you to leave
the car. We didn't have to sit in the car the whole time.
Okay. And nobody said anything?
Nobody said anything.
Okay. So they had you but you couldn't go back to the base?
But I couldn't go back to the base.
As long as you were going forward, you could leave?
Yes.
Now, what made you think of doing that? Do you remember?
When we were going into the friend's house?
Yeah.
Well, I just felt safer, I guess. Okay. I don't know.
You just thought of it. That was pretty good thinking.
Yeah, I just felt safer.
Okay, and you'd obviously been there before.
No, I'd never been to their house. I don't know how I found it. I have no idea. Right now, I can't think of how I did. But I don't remember how long we were evacuated. But we were back in our home by nighttime.
Well, how did you know you could go back? Do you remember?
Well, the air police were monitoring the line and going back and forth and letting us know what was going on.
But you left the line. You went to the friend's house.
Yeah, I didn't stay long. We didn't stay and chat for an hour. I just went to their house and we talked for a little bit and I took you boys back to the car.
You did. The car. You left the car in the line.
Yeah.
Okay, where all the cars are lined up. You just left it there.
Right.
Okay, so you were pretty close to where they lived.
Oh, yeah.
So you must have known where they lived.
Well, I must have found out some way, but it was important for me to...
Okay, so we walked to their house, hang out, walk back to the car.
Right.
And then they came up and down the line saying everybody can go back.
Yeah,
Okay.
It was very organized. They did a good job.
How were you feeling? I mean, were you really stressed out? Were you...
No.
You're amazing.
No, I think we were all that way. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
We knew we were taken care of.
And had you any idea what was going on?
No idea whatsoever.
Did you know it had anything to do with a nuclear weapon?
No, knew nothing about it. They just said that there was danger and a plane had crashed on the runway and we needed to get off the base.
Okay.
And in the meantime, Dad's trying to get back with the general.
Right, General Compton.
Yeah.
So then you get back to the car. Do you remember how long you were in the car?
No.
Did you get anything to eat?
Don't remember that at all.
Okay. And so now they say you can go back, and you get back, you say before dark. Okay, how was Duke?
Oh, fine.
And then, when did you see Dad next?
Probably that night. I don't recall.
Do you recall him telling you what happened?
Not right at the moment, but later.
Did he seem stressed?
Dad never seemed stressed. Never.
Okay.
It's funny.
He just flown back, taxied through a airplane that was burning with a nuclear weapon
on the runway.
On the runway.
And they told him they couldn't land.
Oh, I know that. That's in another recording. And so he's dealt with all that, and now he comes home and you say you didn't seem stressed.
No.
Okay. All right.
Dad never seemed stressed out.
Well, you were the greatest generation.
Yeah, the only time that I saw him stressed, the only time was when he was grounded, when they said he had diabetes, and they wouldn't let him fly until they found out for sure and took care of it. And he was really stressed because he was grounded and couldn't fly.
But this was later, Bell.
This was later.
Okay. Now, at this time, this is really your first posting, permanent posting out of Tucson,
Yeah.
since you've been married and everything. So you start to make some lifelong friends here,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's talk about some of them. You mentioned the Dwaynes.
The Dwaynes.
They had a place in the village. You
Well,
said.
and then they moved on base.
Right, so that was temporary.
Uh-huh.
So, but you visited them in the village,
Uh-huh.
right? But talk about the Dwaynes and how that friendship started and that sort of.
Well, Dad went over in July of '55
Mm-hmm.
and drove the car from Tucson, got me settled in Tucson, and then drove the car to the Brooklyn Navy Yards
Mm-hmm.
in New York, and turned the car in to be shipped to Morocco,
Mm-hmm.
which they told him would take about 6 weeks to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And then he flew out of, I don't know where he flew out, I guess McGuire
Mm-hmm.
in New Jersey to Africa. And so he was there from July until November when I arrived with the children. And as soon as he arrived in Morocco, flying from, was it from Casa, I guess, up to Sidi Slimane, Don Drain was on the plane with him, coming back from a business down in Ben Guerir, I guess. And they met, that's the first time they met, was that when Dad was flying into Sidi Slimane for the first time. And it come to find out he would be the one that Dad would work closely with those years in Morocco. Don was in materiel with the weapons, and Dad was in operations. And they became fast friends very quickly. They liked each other so much. Dad always respected Don. He had such a quick, sharp mind. And Don apparently took to Dad real well. So he asked Dad to come to dinner to their house in the village. And so he did. And Steffi his wife fell in love with your dad because he was so polite and nice. And they had 4 kids, which delighted Dad. He had fun with their kids. And they started inviting him to join the family on weekends when they did things. And so Dad spent a lot of time with the Dwayne family before I arrived. And he mentioned them in almost every letter he wrote to me. So I was looking forward to meeting the Dwaynes. And when I did, we became fast friends. So they became lifelong friends. I still communicate real often on my iPad and on the phone with their twin girls. We had a visit from their son just a week before he died.
Now tell me about Steffi.
Steffi was a different woman, very different person, very rather arrogant in her manner. She was she was German born, of German parents in Berlin, Germany. And she had a sister and a brother. Both of her parents were medical doctors in Berlin. And then the mother was Jewish, Steffi's mother, but her father was Gentile. And so when things got really tough at the end of the 30s with Hitler, they got somehow false passports or visas or whatever they had to get. They were able to get out of Germany, and they eventually got to the United States with their 3 kids. And Steffi, as I think I remember, was about 13 when she arrived with her family at Ellis Island. And so they came to the United States. Her family settled in Baldwin, New York on Long Island, and set up their doctor. I don't know whether her mother set up her practice. She was a pediatrician, I think. I don't think so. I think just the father renewed his practice.
Okay, so but you show up in Morocco and they're there, right? But You said she was arrogant, but was she really? I mean, was
Well, she had a very uh, elite way of holding herself and conducting herself that pushed other women away.
well, what happened to you?
She took to me,
Mm-hmm.
and of course she just adored Babe,
Mm-hmm.
and she took to me and wanted to be my friend,
Mm.
and she was very picky. She had one other friend in her neighborhood that she maintained a friendship with, but she didn't maintain friendships with other women very well.
Mm-hmm.
Very talented. She was a ballet dancer, and she had a little ballet class for the children on the base,
Mm-hmm.
and very sensitive about Nazism.
I'd say so. Yeah.
Her grandmother was gassed in the gas chambers
Mm.
in a concentration camp. So a lot of it had to do with all of her background.
Mm-hmm.
We later met her parents in Malden and spent the day with them there, and made friends with her mom and dad till they died.
Mm-hmm.
Corresponded with them. She always tended to make other people feel like she felt a little bit above them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But not you.
No.
Mm. So you would spend a lot of time with them and their family?
Oh yeah, we've spent almost all of our social time with them, with other people too. But I mean, they were almost always with them,
Mm-hmm.
with us.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth with dinner and played bridge a lot of times together, the four of us.
Well, I know you grew to love her very much.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I loved Steffi very much. I tried to tell her about my faith in the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and I was not very successful.
Mm-hmm.
She came to me and asked me to tell her about it
Mm-hmm.
one day.
Mm-hmm.
Rode her bicycle over to my house and said, "Abby, tell me why you have such a faith in God." So we spent time, and
A fair question from somebody whose grandparents were gassed by Adolf Hitler.
well, and she was brought up they were both atheists, her parents. So she had no background whatsoever to draw anything from. And she told me that. She said, I wasn't brought up with this. She said, I don't know anything about it. And I explained, I look back how feebly I explained it to her. At that time, I wasn't as mature as I was later about my faith. But yeah, I loved Steffi very much, and I loved Don. He was a wonderful man.
You talked about Dr. Doherty.
Oh yeah, we became very good friends.
Who was single and stayed single almost all his entire life, but
until he was in his late 70s.
But remained good friends with the family.
Oh yeah.
Who else did you meet in Morocco who became close?
Well, no others that became lifelong friends except maybe oh no, Dad knew Herman Willie, but I didn't know Kay, his wife, until they moved to the States.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably the only ones over there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course our old military friends came from the squadron at Davis Mountain when we first got married.
Right. Right.
The Smiths and Jacksons.
We'll talk about them later.
Yeah.
So tell me about your quarters. You moved now into the quarters on the base.
Uh-huh.
What were those like? Describe those.
They're very simple but adequate.
Mm-hmm.
They were duplexes,
Mm-hmm.
and all in one section. There were what we called the 30s, and that was 30 houses that were already built that Steffi and Don were in because they were there before we were. And then there were the other flats, we called them, where we lived. And they were 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, with a dining area, and that was it.
And they were fully equipped with a
Yes,
stove
yes.
and oven and basically
Yeah.
like an American home.
With all French equipment, and I couldn't. Dad had to give me a chart that.
Showed you how to use everything.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, did you have domestic help?
Hmm?
Did you ever have domestic help?
Only when I came home from the hospital after the pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor said I could come home, that I still had a spot on my lung, but I could come home if I got help to do my laundry and to mop the floors, and I had to stay in bed a lot until it healed. So Steffi helped me find a Fatima.
And so that worked out. That was the only time. For how long did you have a Fatima?
Until she stole my watch.
Okay. And you caught her, obviously.
I didn't catch her in the act, but she was the only one in the house who could have taken it.
And you lost it. I mean, you didn't get it back.
Oh, never got it back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she stole some flus, some money.
Local money.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so, did you fire her?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you confront her, or you just do, or was it not worth confronting her? You just fired her.
Dad just told her she would have to go because we couldn't trust her anymore.
Okay. And by that time, were you well enough to take over? Now, were you misdiagnosed with that?
Well, when I first went into the hospital, my neighbor took me to the hospital. I was so sick. Dad was in, of course, Dad was in Paris with Dawn on business.
Oh yeah, in Paris.
On business. And of course, you 3 boys. But my neighbor who had 4 boys next door, Dottie Oyen, I called her over and I told her I was just, didn't know what was wrong with me. I was so sick. And she took me over to the dispensary and they checked me over and sent me home. And I got worse in a couple of hours. And I started swelling in my legs, oddly enough. And I started a fever, and Dottie came back over to see me, and she said, "You're going to the hospital." She said, "I'm not going to be responsible for you lying here dying on us." So I said, "I can't go, Dottie." I said, what can I do with my children? I've got these 3 little boys. She said, "They're coming over and staying with us."
Wow, that's nice.
Oh, they were great people. And so I said, "But you've got 4 of your own." She said, "That's all right, we'll have 7. And so she said, "I'm taking you to the hospital, no discussion." So she took me over, and after all of their testing, the doctors stood at the side of my bed, I'll never forget, and one of the doctors, I remember what he looked like, but I can't think of his name, with 2 other doctors. And they were discussing this at the side of my bed, ignoring me completely, but I could hear them. And they were deciding I had some kind of a rare Mediterranean disease. They couldn't figure it out. And I thought, oh, great. And I tugged on Dr. Can't think of his name, on his white jacket, standing there by me, and I tugged on it, and he turned and looked at me, and I said, "What's that?" Because they were talking about some kind of a Mediterranean disease. He said, "Oh, that's not important, Mrs. Hawke. We're just discussing what's going on." I said, "Oh." So Dad, as I say, was in France on business, and he was due back, was it the 2nd night after I was in the hospital? And Hal Oyen, the next door neighbor, he drove over to the flight line and picked Dad up when he flew back. And Dad said, "Well, where's Avonelle?" He said, "She's in the hospital with pneumonia." And by that time they had diagnosed me with pneumonia. I think by that time they had. And so he brought him right over to the hospital. And no, I guess they hadn't, because they made Dad put on a white gown and a mask and all this, and it scared him to death. What's happened to my wife while I was gone? And so I was in the hospital for a week, I guess. And they had They had a doctor at the hospital named Dr. Kling, and he wasn't there when we first arrived in Morocco, but he had an assignment there later. And I got to know Dr. Kling while I was in the hospital. He was a French Jew, and he was sure that I was French. And I remember he came in shortly after I arrived, and he said, as he talked to me, he said, "You're French, aren't you?" And I said, "No, I'm an American." "Well, you sure look French." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm an American." Well, we got to be friends while I was at the hospital. So we invited him over for dinner after I got home and was feeling better. And we got the biggest kick out of him. None of the women on the base liked him. He was very brusque. He was very in your face. He didn't take any guff. And he didn't feel sorry for the women. So we were talking about it that night at dinner. And he said, "These women come in and they're complaining of headaches. They're complaining of feeling dizzy. They're complaining of everything you can think of, and there's not a darn thing wrong with them." And he said, "I sit there and I listen to it, and I examine them." And he said, "Finally, I just say to them, go home, fire your Fatima, take care of your own kids, and you won't have time to feel bad."
You know, and he was probably right.
And he was.
He's probably right.
He was totally right.
So why didn't you hire a Fatima?
I have never liked having domestic help.
So you were unusual in this regard. Did most of the women hire them? And you
I don't know how many did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many did.
A lot did.
A lot of them did. Steffi did.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't.
No.
And that was obviously a conscious decision.
Oh, yeah.
And yet you discussed it with Dad?
Why did I need help? The place was 3 bedrooms with 1 bathroom. I had nothing else to do but take care of my kids in my house.
Mm-hmm.
What else would I do?
Mm-hmm.
That's why these women were so disgusted, because they were bored.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like the idea. They didn't have shopping centers to go to buy things. They didn't have fun things to do like they did in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they complain. So he said, fire your Fatima, take care of your own house and your kids, and you won't have time to feel sick.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And he said, they don't like me. I said, oh, really? No kidding.
So what was your social life like? You have a officers club?
Oh, yeah.
And
there was almost a cocktail party or something going on every weekend at someone's house.
uh-huh.
Yeah, there was a lot of partying that went on, and there was a lot of, there was always a big dance band at the club on Saturday night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In City Slimane, Morocco?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this was a local band they put together, or people touring through?
They come through, and then I don't know where the band came from all the time, but Glenn Miller's band came through with the post-war
Mm-hmm.
guy who took it over.
Right.
We had a lot of entertainment at the club.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and did you take us there for dinner, us kids?
Oh, yeah, once in a while.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it was a good time.
And we had nice parties at different people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
Steffi and Don and your dad and I had a big party at the club, catered to repay everybody for our invitations that we had had, and that was nice. We had a good time there.
I seem to recall there were these desert tortoises. Is that true? These big desert turtles?
I don't remember them.
Because there used to be this joke about Duke mistaking rocks for tortoises and vice versa.
We must have had them, but I don't recall them.
Okay.
I remember the big rocks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then what did I used to do? I used to go out and get some.
Oh, you used to. You had more fun. You played in the backyard. Dad had built a bamboo fence to keep you in, and we had our little ramada that he made. You know, your father, he always added stuff wherever we lived. And you had a good time outside. You had playmates, and the Jewetts lived in the same circle we did.
Well, that's another family we became
Oh, yeah.
lifelong friends with?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Describe
Jewish.
them. Who were they? Ed and
What?
talk about them.
Well, it was Ed and Alice Jewett and their 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. The girl was Jill, she was the youngest, and then there were Steve and Jack, the boys who were older. And Ed had been in the newspaper business before he went in the service, so he was involved in, I guess, public relations in the service. Well, they lived in the same circle on the base that we did. Alice was quite a golfer, nice woman. Ed was a great guy. He just loved it when you'd go over to Ed's garage when Ed would be out there working or doing something. And what did he call you? He had a name for you. What was it?
Doesn't matter.
But it was good. He used to like to talk to you. You were just a little toddler. So he...
Used to call me Bucky or something?
I can't remember what it was. But they moved back to Tucson when we were. They went to Bellevue, like we did, SAC headquarters. And then we followed each other to Tucson. And they bought out in the southwest, on the northwest side of town near us. And
but I used to go out and get bugs, right?
Oh, beetle bugs.
Beetles.
Beetle bugs. And you used to bring them in the pocket of your little overalls that you wore. They were the cutest little overalls. And you pick them up outside and put them in your pockets and bring them in the house. And then you have races across our glass coffee table. And you just had more fun with those beetle bugs. You had a good time.
Now Christmas, were you able to get turkeys and have Christmas
Yeah,
dinners?
the commissary would carry the turkeys. Christmas trees were hard to come by.
In the desert in Morocco.
The first Christmas tree when we were living in the village, we drove 25 miles away from the village when we heard that there were some Christmas trees. And the mangy-looking tree we ended up with was so sad. But we popcorn and we threaded popcorn and cranberries and decorated the tree.
But generally speaking, everybody's basically the same age, with kids of the same age.
Yeah.
So there was a big community of people who were all together doing
Yeah.
all the service,
Yeah.
all same age, all with kids the same age. So it
Right.
was a big old community, I guess.
Yeah.
Were there lots of school activities?
Yeah. And Little League.
Mm-hmm.
And Christmas programs. Parent-teacher conferences. We had the teachers over for dinner a couple of times.
Was there a lot of drinking?
Not any more than usual.
Okay. So there was just no sense of kind of just being isolated and people being
No.
bored and drinking.
No.
Everybody was too mission oriented, I guess.
No. They were too busy.
Yeah.
And the husbands were so busy. The men always had a mission. And Dad was always very serious about his. And I'm sure the others were too.
Now when you got sick, did it cross your mind that it might be tuberculosis or?
No, I didn't know what it was.
Okay. Now I know you've always said, this doesn't have anything to do with Morocco, but both your parents died very young.
Oh, and I used to be worried about it, and I would have x-rays every year until a doctor put me straight in Bellevue, Nebraska. He said, "You don't need to do this." He said, "You have no tuberculosis in your body, and the only way you would get it would be to be exposed to it now." He said, "You don't have to."
What? So that's interesting. You got an X-ray every year. Now,
Yeah.
was that normal? Was that? I guess it wasn't normal.
I don't think it was.
Well, that's interesting. So okay.
Well, the doctor told me when Mike was a year old that he thought I had TB. When I had that extreme bronchitis.
Oh, that time, yeah. Yeah. Now
and that scared me.
that scared you. You thought maybe this is some sort of family tradition. Or
Yeah, I don't know what I thought.
So, but you were always worried that you wouldn't live past your 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here I am, 98 and a half.
Yeah. So
God's been good to me.
So you're there for 2 years. You extend for a year, and then you knew it was coming to an end.
Well, I knew that Dad could have been sent to Madrid on a permanent assignment. We could have gone to Madrid. Georgia always got a kick out of giving Dad a bad time. You chose Omaha, Nebraska over Madrid, Spain. But he went up to Madrid often on business because the work was connected with the U.S. facilities up in Madrid. And but then they changed. Like, I don't know whether there were orders for that, or anyway, the Dad came home and he said, well, we're not going to go to Madrid, we're going to go to Offutt Air Force Base in Bellevue, Nebraska. SAC headquarters.
And so how long, from that point until you were gone, about how long did you have to get ready to go? Do you remember?
Probably not more than a couple months.
And then do they give you like a month of leave between those kinds of postings? So you went, at that point you went back and then went to Tucson, spent a month, I think? Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, we'll end it here. That's the Morocco chapter. We may revisit it if I come up with some more questions. But that was great. Love you.
I love you more.
No, you don't.